The title of our series is What the Bible Teaches About Israel. And so we're doing this because it's a hot topic right now. It's a really hot topic, and we're being asked questions, and we want to state clearly what our view about Israel is, at least as much as we can in 2 weeks. Okay, at least as much as we can in 2 weeks. Now, if you're unaware that this is a hot topic, congratulations, right? Somehow you've managed to steer clear of it despite its prevalence on social media and in church circles, right? Sadly, it's become a dividing line for many, right? The divide generally centers on whether or not the church replaces Israel in God's divine plan. And if so, what that means for the physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Israel, right? The question being asked then is this: it's whether or not God is obligated to keep his promises to them in light of the New Testament and the New Covenant. That's the question. Sometimes this centers around the question, whether the question is about land, right? Whether the question's around the question of land and if they're going to get the land that was promised to them. In other words, is God obligated to return Israel to the land? The question about blessing or cursing Abraham comes up in this discussion, and whether or not that means Abraham and his physical descendants. It's often part of this conversation. What else is part of it? Well, there's lots of things. We're going to get into it. So what I want to say is these questions are not answered by quoting a few New Testament verses, right? Instead, we find the answers in the story of the Bible. The Bible is a story, and it's meant to be read left to right. And that's where the questions or the answers to our questions come from, in the story of the Bible. Now, we're going to look at the story this week. We're going to look at the story in the history of Israel in the Old Testament. So we're going to lay out the story in the Old Testament and look at the verses and the passages and the promises that concern Israel. And then next week, we're going to explore some history from the New Testament, right? Specifically the Gospels. And then we're going to look at a few specific passages that are sometimes used to argue the church has replaced Israel and that God is done with that part of history. So are you ready to get started?